My name is Abraham Deweese. I'm the host of your show today. With me are Robert English and Richard Michelson. SSU Live, we are a function of Seattle Sports Union. You can catch our great articles at seattlesportsunion.com. You can check us out on Facebook under Seattle Sports Union. And as well, you can check our tweets out at SSU. Hey guys, I'm glad to be back on the air again. We took a month off right after the Super Bowl, but I'm still into football, guys. Are you guys still into football? Seahawks specifically.
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, it's football season and then waiting for football season. So I try to dig into any piece of football talk I can, between now and, August.
Guys, I was taking a look at these losses. I have a hard time calling them losses because every year you're going to have free agents go. Every year you're going to add new free agents. And the way the Seattle Seahawks have been doing things in the last 4 or 5 years, they haven't been losses. They've been carefully calculated moves to let people go who they can't afford, and then bring on new guys who are younger and can do the same job at a same high level of excellence. And I wrote a couple articles this week on SeattleSportsUnion.com about J.R. Sweezy, about Michael Irvin, and about, of course, the guy that I really am frustrated that went away was Brandon Mebane.
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely. Go ahead, Rich.
I was just going to say, right now, there hasn't been much of the way of moves for the Seahawks, though they did get one that I think most people will not really think is all that important, but I actually think is pretty critical, as they re-signed John Ryan, their punter.
Now
you're gonna laugh
and punter in the same sentence.
I did. Just wait till your special teams is a debacle like the San Diego Chargers of a few years ago, who had the number one offense, number one defense, worst special teams, and they ended up 8-8 and out of the playoffs.
Right.
I'm more worried though about Ricardo Lockett not ever coming back. He almost died on the field. I'm more worried about him on special teams than I am Ryan.
No way. No way. John Ryan is far more of an integral part of our special teams than Ricardo Lockett. He's great. He's a speedy guy. He gives you that opportunity to, once he gets the ball in his hands, he might do something big with it. But being able to flip the field there's nothing like being able to flip the field consistently. Put the ball, coffin corner kicks, all that good stuff. John Ryan is one of the best punters in the league, bar none. So, it's absolutely very important to sign John Ryan.
Robert, I like you a lot. You're a great guy, but you've been buying into the Pete Carroll, philosophy here.
Sure.
Flipping the field is interesting and it's fun and it's integral part of the game. But Ricardo Lockett as a gunner is simply at when he's healthy at the best, the best in the NFL. I don't see anybody since Steve Tasker that does the job that he does.
Here's the thing, Abe. You wanted to talk about value and smart signings and smart uses of money. Okay, getting a punter who is consistent, locked down is very important. Gunners in the NFL have a lifespan like tissue paper. Look no farther than years gone by. Alex Bannister, also a Pro Bowler, first-team All-Pro gunner. Mm-hmm. How long was he a first-team All-Pro? 1 year, and he was out of the NFL 3 years later. So, saying that a gunner it's almost like saying a long snapper. But punters last like 20 years in the NFL if they're good.
Exactly.
You're a great guy.
When you can flip the field like John Ryan can, it's literally with a team, especially like Seattle, where our defense is really our bread and butter. When you can put a team deep in their own territory, that makes the job much easier on our defense. And that's setting our defense in having that easier job sets our offense up to be in a better position. So John Ryan, absolutely huge signing.
Why do I feel like Rusty Tillman came to both of your homes and tried to recruit you? I don't know why we're spending any time talking about special teams. I want to talk about Brandon Mebane.
Okay,
Rusty Tillman, by the way, guys, I know you two know who he is. He was an old special teams coordinator for the Seahawks. Great, special teams the Seahawks had. But I want to talk about Brandon Mebane. I think this is the most integral, key player that we have lost in years. And I'm not really happy that we have nothing to back him up. Zero.
Well, I was very surprised to learn that he moved on. And actually, I called into San Diego sports radio because, as you know, I'm down here, and I told them they got a great player, a great addition to their defensive line in Brandon Mebane. But if you think about it, as far as players coming up on the defensive line, you know, you've got Frank Clark, Taba Rubin. Both those guys are going to be huge this year. I think they're both poised to be great on our defensive line. Somebody's going to have to go, as you said earlier. You know, you're gonna lose players. A couple years ago, we lost Chris Clemens. I thought that was a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, I hated losing Chris Clemens, but you know, it has to happen.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll be all right with that.
But there's a difference between an edge rusher and you're talking about a Chris Clemens and a Michael Irvin and not Michael Irvin, I'm sorry.
Bruce Irvin. Yeah.
And
an
and a
interior
Frank,
lineman,
and
right?
a Frank Clark, and not just an interior lineman. You're talking about a nose tackle who plays that 0-1 technique,
Right.
and you know can line up over that gap over the center and guard.
Center and
There
guard.
is nobody that we have right now on the bench at Mebane's level or has a ceiling that can get to Mebane's level. That worries me.
I don't know about that. You never know. I mean, Jordan Hill has shown that he definitely has pass rushing skills. He's also been better at the point of attack. Now, he hasn't been a dominant figure like Brandon Mebane, but you know, if anything, Pete Carroll has shown that he has an ability to be flexible within the 4-3, cover 3 that he likes to run. He is not one player defines the whole system, and if that player leaves, you're screwed. Like that's just not how he's built that defense. If any, I mean, even if Richard Sherman or Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas go, it's not like the whole system just grinds to a halt. It won't be quite as good, but they'll make adjustments because they'll get better players at other positions.
Oh, I disagree wholeheartedly. I think if Earl Thomas, something were to happen to him, this entire thing would just fall, to pieces. And I'm going to go, this is kind of like that baseball theology, a strength up the middle, right? I want that. I want that nose tackle because even though it's a 4-3 defense, Rich, you're looking at them running a lot of over and under. They don't run just a standard, balanced formation. And when you run that nose tackle, it's more like a 3-4 defense in that he forces the guards to make a decision as to what they're going to do on any set play. And so I want my Mebane, I want my Bobby Wagner, and I want my Earl Thomas. And everything else you can build out and you can replace. Those three guys are hard to replace.
Definitely hard to replace, and again, it's not that with any of those guys being gone, it wouldn't be a loss, but is it a loss that we can't overcome? And I don't believe that's the case.
Well, okay, I don't think there's anybody on the team that can replace him. Do you?
Well, maybe not now, but it's got a long time between now and August. You know, we've got free agency, we got the draft. I mean, who knows what's going to happen between now and then? Somebody might get traded. You know, that's not out of the works. You know, so
Who do you guys like out there?
For what position?
Free agent wise for nose tackle.
Let's see who's free right now.
Nick Fairley. See, this is a
Oh
little-
yeah,
This is a really good question.
yeah.
Well, absolutely. I love Nick Fairley.
You set us up.
I'll tell you what, if the Seahawks the numbers are right and the Seahawks can get him, I would absolutely love him. He made Ndamukong Suh look really good in Detroit because he is that BJ Raji type guy, the guy that's just too physical for you to not double team. Sometimes they triple teamed him and let Sue go one-on-one with a guy, which was insane, but it was true.
Don't forget BJ Raji's available too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd take him.
Well,
He's
the
probably
problem-
good for another year or two.
I'd say the problem, with Raji is that he's only good for a couple more years. And does he retire? Does he take a hometown discount to retire as a Packer would be the question.
That's probably true.
But I'm a big fan of Nick Fairley. You're looking at a kid who's like, 25, 26, fourth year in the league, has not gotten into those shenanigans that he did at LSU. And like you said, he helped make Ndamukong Suh get all the money that Ndamukong Suh got.
How much is he going to cost though?
Fairley. See, that's the tough part. That's the tough part, Rob, because what do the Hawks have? 15 million in salary cap. If you offer him like 8-9 million, that doesn't give you much room for anything else, right?
Right. And I was actually very surprised, and I hope I'm not jumping the gun, but I was very surprised that we ended up signing Jermaine Kearse. You know, because that's money that I thought was going to be free to be used elsewhere. I did not think he was going to be resigning with us.
I
Uh,
did not want him resigned.
well, I appreciate him as a receiver. He, you know, he had that really ugly game in the playoffs against Green Bay. You know, he made up for it in the end. But I like him as a receiver. He was a little quiet this season.
I,
Um,
and I don't want to say there's anything, substantially wrong with him. I just look at somebody like a Paul Richardson that might be a good replacement.
right,
I look at some of the guys that are backed up. Maybe your Cason Williams, whomever else that
right,
can jump in and do the same job for
right.
less money. Because you mentioned it, you're looking at $4 million for Jermaine Kearse. 4 million.
It seems like a lot, but I mean, maybe, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Well, I guess we'll see. I guess we're gonna see because if he has another quiet year, it may not even matter. He might be gone anyway, even with a new contract. So, you know, but I was
His
surprised to see him.
his re-signing is a little Craig Griffey-esque. I don't know if you guys remember who
Yeah, I
Craig
remember.
Griffey was.
Yeah, Ken Griffey Jr.'s brother.
Little brother who got drafted by the Mariners a couple years later after Griffey had become a superstar. Jermaine Kearse is to Russell Wilson kind of what Craig Griffey was to Ken Griffey, in that he's a security blanket. He's someone that makes him feel comfortable because they were
alone.
both, well, yeah, because Russell Wilson and basically threw to Jermaine Kearse like 1,000 times their first training camp together because they were both second string at the time. And Kearse was an undrafted free agent just trying to make the cut. And so what is he going to go do? He's going to go catch balls from anyone he can catch balls from. And so basically they threw far more than you normally would, even in 2-a-days in a training camp together. And that's why, in case you're ever wondering, why Russell Wilson always goes to Jermaine Kearse in that big moment. If he's panicked or if he doesn't know where else to go with the ball, he throws it at Kearse because that's his security blanket.
He's also a high effort player. And speaking of high
Mhm.
effort, J.R. Sweezy, converted defensive lineman, turned into an offensive guard, went for, in my opinion, way too much money, to another team. And the question is, how do we replace him? Is this a big blow at all? It's tough. It's a guy who's been around for 4 years, and I just wonder, is this what we're going to do? We're going to develop players for other teams?
Hey, that's fine as long as we can keep winning with the new guys that come in and take their spot. You know, I mean, hey, send them off. You know, J.R. Sweezy, he was hot and cold. I mean, we've seen Sweezy at his best, and we've seen him at not so great.
Yeah.
You know, he's good for a penalty or two and a couple holding calls. You know he's good for that. You know, because I've loved J.R. Sweezy, and I've very much disliked J.R. Sweezy over the last few years. You know, he's kind of a hot-headed guy. So in some ways, I'm kind of like, hey, let him be somebody else's problem. But then if he goes to where did he end up going? He went to
Jets, right?
is it the Jets he went to?
I believe.
I mean, if he
So
goes
he-
out there, he starts
He
balling
went to a
for them.
dumpster fire.
Right. It's like maybe he'll shine there. You know what I mean? But you know, if he goes out there and starts balling and starts, you know, he ends up, you know, being an all pro lineman, then you know, it'd be like, no, I should have kept him. But he's definitely,
I think he's average to above average. I think that's.
except for when he's really on, then he's great. Because he has those times where he goes those streaks where he's great, you know.
Isn't that the moniker of an average player though? One
Right.
who's really good and then really
That's true.
bad, and they kind of average out, right?
That's true.
But I mean, like, do we have the depth to make up for him?
Not really, but nobody has the
Not yet.
depth to make up for starting offensive linemen. I mean, with the NFL roster rules being so thin, I mean, you carry 53 men plus another 6 on your practice squad. I mean, nobody has more than basically more than 2 deep at any position. On offensive linemen, most teams run with 8. So 5 starters and 3 backups, basically center, guard, tackle. That's it. And maybe one guy off the practice squad occasionally, or occasionally they might carry a 9th guy. So, I mean, nobody has offensive line depth in the NFL. I mean, last season, I remember I was watching a Monday Night Football game. The 49ers were blowing someone out, and I can't remember who it was, but their starting left tackle got his knee twisted late in the fourth quarter. They had like a 35-point lead, and you're like, well, I'm thinking to myself, why is the starter in there? Well, the reason is because There's no one to replace him. There's no depth. The other tackle had actually already gone down halfway through the second half with a knee injury, and so they were down to 2 tackles. So there's just no depth. Nobody has depth at offensive line in the NFL.
Yeah.
And in that respect, I think if anybody will be able to fight through that, Seattle will. If you look at our offensive line play over the last couple of years, we've made lemonade out of lemons for the most part. We've had a couple of good guys, and we've just played the round robin of, put a guy here, put a guy there. So with that being considered, I think we probably should be able to, whoever we fit in there, Tom Cable will get him working how we need him to work. And Russell Wilson can always, make magic with his cleats. So
I want to jump in here. One other thing. This is not a oh crud, the name just escaped me. Back in 2005, Hutchison. Steve, this is not
Steve
a Steve
Hutchison.
Hutchison.
No, it's not.
This is not it's not a situation where we're letting a Hall of Famer leave in
Right.
the prime of his career to go run block for a great running back in Adrian Peterson.
Right.
This is not that type of a situation. This is, an average at best guard, and guards are not valuable in the NFL scheme of things.
Well,
Pretty
is the
much
same-
because centers and tackles could both play guard is
Okay,
basically.
well, is
just
the
my-
same true for Bruce Irvin then? Are we letting go of another average player and someone else is going to overpay him?
Bruce Irvin, I was talking about this with a few buddies of mine. I see Bruce Irvin as a guy who was just made workable in our defense. In my opinion, he pretty much failed at his originally, considered position. Coming off the edge as an edge rusher for in West Virginia, he was coming off the edge and getting the quarterback 9 times out of 10. As soon as he got to the pros, he couldn't do that. His speed was negated by the size and ability of those offensive linemen. So we tried to make him into more of a coverage linebacker, and he wasn't really that good at that either. So
Let me throw this at you. I mean, he played in the NASCAR package as that right end, that rush end, and he also played as a strong side linebacker that covered running backs out of the flat. So and tight ends out of the flat, out into the flat. And did he fail? I don't know. I thought he kind of actually. We get back to the word average. I thought he was average.
he averaged out.
He averaged out. I mean, he had some good plays. He had some bad plays.
Well, where would you rank him if I list the starters for the Seahawks? Where would you rank him?
For the Seahawks.
11.
Yeah, it's as a starter probably.
I would put him at
Bottom.
10th. I'd put Atiba Rubin behind him as far as overall ability. Is
But versatility. He can play
sure.
3 downs. I mean,
Sure.
that's-
I mean, he's versatile. What he is an elite niche player.
Right.
That's what he is.
I
he's-
wrote in my article he's a nice to have, but not
Yes.
necessary.
Yes.
I think when I think of Bruce Irvin, I think of a guy, in so far in his professional career, his speed is his greatest asset, right?
Yeah.
That's his greatest asset. But his head, his knowledge of the game, as far as his NFL career, he never really caught on well enough to really be that great player we had hoped he was going to be. So when you add that with speed, I think his speed just makes him get out of position faster than most people. That's what I see. That's what I see. And I think of Bruce Irvin.
You talk about head as well. I mean, you're talking about the only guy who ever got thrown out of a Super Bowl.
There you
So,
go. See? Yeah.
I think
Right.
he's I think he's replaceable. I mean, Frank Clark, I think, is his replacement for that NASCAR package, and I think that Kevin Pierre-Louis
Here, Lewis.
is just as fast, if not faster. And
Really?
his 440 speed is faster than
Well, more to the point,
Irvin.
I liked what I saw out of Pierre Lewis as far as fundamentals,
Yeah.
knowing where to be flowing to the right spot, either in support or at the point of attack. Never one of those guys that tried to go around a block,
yeah.
which I saw Bruce Irvin do a ton of.
That's what he was used to doing. With
Yeah.
that speed, he could do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, at West Virginia, you can do that in the old ACC. Or
Big East.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big Easy. You can do that in the Big Easy. You can't do that at
At
this level.
NFL. No, not so much.
Not
All
in the
right,
league. Yeah.
All right, guys, we got to run a break. We are Seattle Sports Union. We're back, and we're going to go to a quick break and come right back, talk a little bit about coaches and when you should let them go and if you need to keep them. Welcome back to SACU Live. My name is Abraham DeWeese. With me are Robert English and Richard Michelson. How's it going, guys?
It's going all right.
It's great, man.
In the previous segment, we talked a little bit about the Seahawks and who they lost, but I want to talk a little bit about Coach Lorenzo Romar of the University of Washington Huskies. He has gone 5 years without going to the NCAA tournament, and we're talking about a gentleman who's been with the program now for some 15 odd years. Guys, 5 years without a tourney berth, it's time for him to go, isn't it? Like this, what other job in professional sports can you go 5 years without achieving the standard for success and not be in trouble?
It's a tough one.
We don't have a lot of defenders for Romar here, okay?
No,
I
no,
mean,
not at all.
I mean, I want to take a look at like maybe some of the other sports. So look at Marty Schottenheimer over at the Chargers years ago. Got replaced by Norv Turner because he couldn't make it to the Super Bowl. That might have been an overreaction, but you know, there's a standard of success that the Chargers have set. Here are the things that you need to do to succeed, and that will take as as a measure for success. And he couldn't do it.
So
Marty,
go ahead, Robert. Go ahead, Robert.
Marty Schottenheimer's situation was a tragedy, a travesty. There's no if they had stayed playing Marty ball, they would have had a ring or two by now. They went 14-2, and then they fire the guy. Like, I mean, just I will never be able to understand how you get rid of Marty Schottenheimer. Dean Spanos. Being down here, you hear a lot. Not a lot of people have too many good things to say about Dean Spanos here in San Diego, the owner of the Chargers. That was a complete and total tragedy. Chargers would be way more prestigious at this point if they had kept Marty Schottenheimer.
Well, how do you say that? Marty Schottenheimer's never been to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, but the team they had when they were there, when he was there, no one wanted to play the Chargers. Nobody wanted to play the Chargers at that point in time. I mean, how do you they're at the peak of their well, not their peak of their success, but for recent success, they're at the peak of it, and you fire the coach. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense to me. Another one, real quick, is another guy I didn't appreciate getting fired was Lovie Smith in Chicago. The guy was winning 10 games a year, and he got to the playoffs. A couple of those seasons, the 10 games didn't get him there, I think. But if you're winning 10 games, how are you going to fire the coach? I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Okay, great. I'm glad I got you riled up, because this actually kind of speaks to my point. And the point is that, okay, that's the end where it may be a little irrational to get rid of the coach. Now you're looking at the other end. Let's take a look at Lorenzo Romar. Hasn't been able to make it into the NCAA tournament, the field of 68. And it's not irrational to say he needs to be gone, right?
No, it's not. It's really not. So here I got to jump in with Marty Schottenheimer. So first of all, Marty Schottenheimer never went to a Super Bowl. Lots of coaches never gone to a Super Bowl, but a 14-2 season, you host a playoff game and you get Tom Brady'd. Really? That's your standard? You lose to Tom Brady. Brady pulls off 2 miracle drives, is absolutely fantastic. Basically, in soccer, you talk about a shot that no goalie in the world could have stopped. In football, it was drives that no defense in the world could have stopped. I mean, he's putting balls into place. I remember watching that game, rooting my heart out for the Chargers because I hated the Patriots at that point. It was an inexcusable thing. And the real reason that Schottenheimer got fired is because A.J. Smith hated him. Okay, and it was finally an excuse to fire the man. So if your issue is you just don't like someone and you fire him, own up to that. I don't like him. We have a working problem. I'm going to fire the guy.
Okay.
But it's way different than a guy who's learned his course, like, say, one Pete Carroll at USC. That relationship had kind of run its course. He won a couple national titles. He went on. Things got, messy, and then it was kind of time for him to go.
Okay, I didn't want to get into a Marty Schottenheimer debate, but I'm
well,
bring it.
but
Marty Schottenheimer never did it at Kansas City. He never did it at Cleveland, and he had several good teams at San Diego, and he couldn't produce. I mean, those are the expectations that the owner has. The owner has the right to say bye-bye.
But it wasn't the owner. That's the thing. You're missing the whole. It's the GM.
GM.
It's the GM, and the GM didn't like him.
But if the owner had a problem with it, he would have said, no, GM, you do not fire him.
But then we
Eh.
criticize owners for not being owners. We criticize them for, meddling and all that good stuff.
Well, yeah, speaking of meddling, Jimmy Johnson with the Cowboys,
Yeah.
Jerry Jones told him to take a hike after he
It's
won
true.
3 Super Bowls. So you're right. I mean, there's a certain element of meddling to it. But when is the right time to get rid of a coach and when isn't? I mean, isn't it when they don't meet the expectations?
That's what it is. I think it's expectations, because and the expectations can change, can be different depending on where you are as a franchise at any given moment. If you're already a team that's on the fringe or on the cusp of making the playoffs, then your expectation is to be getting the playoffs and be in the mix for maybe a shot at the title. But if you're already a playoff team, when the new coach comes in, your next step is a championship. So you have to meet the expectation. If you're only winning 2 games a year, if you come in as a new coach and you win 8 or 9 games, you've blown the expectations out of the water, I think. You know what I mean? So it's all, I guess everything's relative when it comes to that.
But you mentioned that expectations are malleable. They can change. And if you take a look at somebody like Seattle Sounders head coach Ziggy Schmidt, this is a gentleman that's gone to the playoffs. How many times, Rich? 5, 6 years in a row?
7 in a row.
Seven in a row.
Every year of the Sounders' existence, they haven't won a cup, and it's the club's stated goal is to win MLS Cup, and go to the Champions League and win the Champions League,
But fans
and they
are
haven't
demanding-
done either one of those.
Fans are demanding for his head because he hasn't achieved that championship that he's supposed to get. But isn't, and I'm playing the devil's advocate on this one, but isn't 7 straight playoff appearances good? Isn't that a great thing?
I would think so.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of the sport, I mean, and I guess that figures into what you guys were talking about with Marty Schottenheimer. You're succeeding, you're just not reaching that final objective.
So I guess that has to do, with progression too. I guess if you're not progressing, if you become stagnant, if you reach a plateau, then I guess I suppose that's a reason for change as well. Even if you're reaching the playoffs every year, even if you're getting to the AFC Championship every year, but if you don't progress to that next step, people get upset with that.
When does it get ridiculous? Like, when do you get into a situation like the Miami Heat, where Pat Riley came down from the not the press box, but the GM's office, to kick out the coach to take the credit for a championship that was going to happen anyway?
Yeah. That's pretty ridiculous.
It was pretty ridiculous. That's one of the more absurd things that I've ever seen in my life. And he is, I mean, Stan Van Gundy.
Stan Van Gundy, yeah.
who is a fantastic coach. I mean, if Seattle had a basketball team, Stan Van Gundy would be on my short list of possible hires for that team. But yeah, I mean, that is a ridiculous thing. I was just thinking of other coaches that have kind of run their course. George Seifert in San Francisco.
Right.
He took over for Bill Walsh, and of course, expectations are sky high. He takes them probably to their greatest, or arguably their greatest team.
95.
The 88 team, or the 89 team, the one that blew out the Broncos 55-10 in the Super Bowl.
Yes. That was Seifert?
Okay.
I thought that was Walsh.
That was Seifert, yeah, because Walsh retired after the Niners Bengals championship because he was burned out.
Right.
In San Francisco. So Seifert took over and then kind of retooled things and then won again in '95 with Steve Young. But then at the tail end, like very quickly, things went kind of just downhill from there because NFL had new rules. Free agency was changed to a more fair system. They couldn't just keep all of their best players that Walsh had accumulated over the years.
Yeah.
So
If I remember right, Seifert was also kind of prickly.
He was very prickly.
Questioning him.
And then, 3 years after they won a Super Bowl, he's fired. They bring in Steve Mariucci.
Mooch.
So, yeah, Mooch. So, I mean, there's one of few coaches that's won 2 Super Bowl titles, and he was summarily dismissed, basically, because that relationship had kind of run its course.
Right.
I guess it boils down to it's a what have you done for me lately? That's really what it is.
Do you get a bigger leash in college, or is that dependent on the organization also?
Depends on the organization.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
maybe Alabama football, you better win now. Better not get caught with hookers in a Pensacola hotel.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, just another kind of weird, relationship that ran its course was in New York City. The new soccer club that they have there in NYCFC hired a new coach. The team is owned by the Yankees and by a Manchester City
Yeah.
group. He was taken to Manchester City for a whole year to be trained in how to coach their way.
Yeah.
Brought into New York City and then told to coach and win with a bunch of scrubs. It's an expansion team, and then a bunch of players that he didn't want to coach, and then he was fired after 1 year. So it's like the other extreme of that kind of a situation of a relationship running its course. It's just kind of strange.
But it's kind of strange too that you get in a situation like LeBron getting his own coach fired. Not that that's ever been proven, but come on, he got his coach fired.
I hate that.
Yeah,
I hate that. I hate when they let the players more or less run the team. You know, you're a player. There's players and there's coaches.
Well, who's they, Rob?
They?
Yeah,
Ownership.
I mean, because like the coach needs to be powerful enough to tell LeBron to shut the heck up. And
I don't
do
care
his
if your coach is the most meek, humble person in the world. He's your coach. His job is to tell you what to do. It's not your job to tell him what to do. It's not your job to say I don't know. I guess I agree more with the whole a chain of command thing. I don't appreciate when players can have that much influence on their organization like that. It's just something I've never really appreciated.
See, Rob, I know that you've worked with the military before, so I understand your perspective on that.
Oh my gosh!
But
Now you put in
respect the
perspective for me
chain of
now.
command,
Now
respect the office.
I can't believe I just said it now. That's terrible.
Yeah,
But
right.
I mean, these are guys who are brought up to. These are guys who are brought up. The big difference here is LeBron's making however umpteen $1 million he is, and you have a coach who's making a lot less. And the position of the coach is not important. I'm sorry, not as important in basketball as the star player is. So it's a strange situation where they've built, a franchise off of a player, and you need
Right.
like the coach as a support agent rather than as a.
All right, Abe, I'm going to push back on you
No.
there.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I am. Okay, quickly.
This is
Name
not a
Tim.
Utah
Tim,
Jazz-
Tim
this
name.
isn't the
No, no,
Utah
no, no,
Jazz
no,
thing.
no, 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 not at all.
Okay.
But on that topic, name Karl Malone and Jerry John Stockton's head coach.
Sloan.
Okay. Who was the guy that coached Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal?
That would be the Zen master.
The Zen master,
Phil
yeah,
Phil Jackson.
Mhm.
How about down in San Antonio? Who coached Tim Duncan?
Popovich.
Popovich. Who won the NBA title last year? There was a point guard and the head coach were pretty good.
Well,
Steph Curry and
Steph Curry and
who's the
Steve
coach?
Kerr. Steve Kerr.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at, just a little bit of pushback specifically to basketball. Head coaches really do matter at the highest level. And when you have specifically an NBA team that's successful, or even a college basketball team, say like North Carolina, where they have someone like Roy Williams, it's a partnership. It's a really good partnership between the head coach.
No.
No, it is between the head coach and the star players.
In college, the head coach is a dictator. He runs the entire franchise.
Oh
Whereas
no,
in the
that's
NBA, he's a facilitator.
no. You're thinking like Bobby Knight, who, by the
There's
way,
nothing wrong with Bobby Knight.
except he only won one
Except when he
title.
throws chairs at his players. That's a little
Yeah.
bit outside the
He
box.
If Rich were in this room, I'd throw a chair at him too.
But the most successful, I mean, look at what Steve Kerr has done.
Mhm.
He has done his homework, first of all, to become a head coach. Second of all, when he was hired, the first thing he did was get on the phone to his players and then meet with them face to face and then say, this is what I'm thinking of, but you tell me what you think you can do successfully. How do I get the best out of you? It was a partnership. Yes,
Yeah,
he's the
a
boss.
A facilitator, yeah. I
Yeah.
understand.
So, but the coach as dictator just doesn't work. Not for the long run.
Patino, all the time. I mean, it all the time works in college.
Mm,
And that's the reason why Patino and Tarkanian couldn't make it in the NBA. That attitude doesn't work in the NBA as a coach.
Well, they say that the players coach thing doesn't work in football either, but we've done a pretty good job of it. Pete Carroll.
Yeah, now football's a little bit different, isn't it? I mean, than basketball. Larger squads, and the mindset's a little bit different too.
I suppose, but how many coaches in the NFL? I mean, how many situations you got players in around the league that want to come to Seattle for the environment, the atmosphere that Pete Carroll creates there? You know,
But who's the diametric opposite to Carroll? That'd be Bill Belichick, right?
Hmm.
People are
probably Bill
flocking.
Belichick.
People are flocking to Patriots. Don't they flock to wherever you're winning? I mean, isn't
Yeah,
that
wherever there's a lot of notches in the win column, people want to go there.
okay? We got to run a
That's
break in a second, but nobody's answered my question. Do the Huskies keep Lorenzo Romar or not?
They should not. It's time to find another good coach, and specifically what I think that the Huskies need as a non-traditional basketball power in the Pac-12. What they need is a young, semi-unproven assistant at some other big program. That's what they need if they want to be successful, because a retread isn't going to cut it.
Last word for you, Rob.
You know, Romar, I didn't have too much history on him, but I think when it comes to coaches, like I said before, you have to produce, you have to progress. You have to progress. If you're not progressing, and certainly if you're regressing, but if you're not progressing in your results, yeah, it's been 2, 3 some odd years. One more thing, look at Cincinnati Bengals.
Marvin Lewis.
Marvin Lewis. Marvin Lewis, is he going to have a job when it comes around again? You know, I mean, he's been one and done quite a few times in the playoffs now. It was it 13 years and I think what six or seven appearances and all one and done.
Yeah.
So you got to think he's probably on his way out, but he's been they stayed the course with him. You know, so
All right.
I don't know. It depends.
Great thoughts, guys. All right. We're going to come back from a break here in a minute. We're going to talk about performance enhancing drugs and their place in sports or lack thereof. Thanks for hanging out with us. This is Seattle Sports Union. We'll be right back. Welcome back to SSU Live. My name is Abraham DeWeese. With me are Robert English and Richard Michelson. We are Seattle Sports Union. Check us out on our website, seattlesportsunion.com, for our great articles. Check us out on Facebook at Seattle Sports and Seattle Sports Union, and check out our Twitter at SSU. Hey guys, I want to talk a little bit about PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, and where we are right now. For the sake of this conversation, I want to discuss baseball, just in a nebulous manner. Runs are down, home runs are down, people aren't coming out to the stadium, ratings are down, and kind of correlates with the exit of PEDs within that sport. I'm kind of thinking maybe we ought to start getting these guys back on the roads to get some home runs, guys.
Hey, you know what? I don't want to say I'm torn, but I feel there should be a comprehensive study done, and there should be a level of performance enhancing drugs that should be allowed. And nothing crazy, but there's all different types of chemicals out there. There should be something that is allowed for these guys to use. They all want to gain a competitive advantage. I mean, that's their livelihood. If they're 1 second late, or 1 second behind, that's the difference between them having a job and not having a job. So they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it. Like you said about baseball, when you had Sammy Sosa, Mark McGuire, and everybody hitting all those home runs, everybody wanted to be there to catch one of those balls.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody wanted to be there. That's why the stands were full. Now, like I said, all the runs are down, home runs, and everything's down now, and stadiums are half empty most days.
yeah.
I think they shouldn't be allowed to do anything. They should be allowed to do something. Honestly, that's why I believe in all sports.
I like your suggestion. Maybe have Major League Baseball, run their own studies and see what this is, and then the steroid thing is pretty black and white. Obviously, I was joking. The steroid thing is pretty black and white. That's an illegal substance. It's a controlled substance. It shouldn't. It's breaking the law using it. But
Right.
some of the other things out there. If you look at cortisone, if you look at aspirin, those kind of things, Adderall. I mean, these are all like substances you can get over the counter, right? But
Yeah, I mean,
within the
there's
sport, they're kind of no.
well, I mean, it's just such a slippery slope, and I feel a hypocritical subject. And Abe is trying to get me riled up with this subject, and I'm going to do my best to please him. But
Get him, Rich.
what is it with our society the last 20 years? I think that the sports writers, some of them feel like they were duped by the baseball players, and now anyone that has the least sniff of any performance enhancing drug becomes a pariah, becomes a whipping boy, becomes let's burn them at the stake. And the issue is baseball players specifically have been using performance enhancing drugs going back into the 60s. There's reports of it back as early as the 50s. NFL players have been definitely used. I mean, they use drugs like crazy between NFL players and WW, whatever, E or whatever it was in the 70s and 80s. I mean, those guys were hopped up on steroids. Now, pro wrestling, that's kind of what you expect, right? It's for fun.
It's entertainment.
It's
not-
entertainment. But now, sports is supposed to be the ultimate form of entertainment because you don't know what's going to happen, and it's supposed to be fair. And so, I find I don't think that performance enhancing drugs. I'm not condoning the behavior at all. With that being said, I also think that we as a society are a bit hypocritical because we point at the players of the 70s and say they were paragons of virtue, and we look at the players of the late 80s, 90s, and early 2000s and say, oh, they're just despicable. We're not going to put any of them in the Hall of Fame,
Right.
which I think is a massive amount of hypocrisy, because if greenies help you, so do anabolic steroids.
You bet. Well, you take a look at someone like what was it, Harold Baines, who had vials of cocaine in his back pocket and would use them right before he stole bases.
Or the biggest hypocrite to me in the world on this subject is Joe Morgan, who Hall of Famer second baseman, played on the Big Red Machine. The Big Red Machine, in their locker room, they had a bowl that looked like M&Ms, except it wasn't M&Ms. It was freaking greenies
They're
to give you
barbiturates,
to barbiturates to get you up because you're exhausted after when you play 162 game season, especially on AstroTurf in the 70s. I mean, so it's amazing amount of hypocrisy. Yes, we should do something. Yes, I love Robert's idea. Let's have a list of stuff that is okay to use, and have a list of stuff that isn't, and not necessarily be beholden to the World Anti-Doping Association for all the guidance, I guess, is my thought.
Right. That's what I believe. You look at like Richard Sherman a couple of years ago. Him and Browner both got popped for the whole Adderall thing.
Yeah.
It was Adderall. I mean, come on, really, Adderall. I mean, and the reality of it is, it probably helped them. I mean, it certainly. I mean, I've taken Adderall before. It makes you very aware. I mean, it makes you. I imagine that you will be a step quicker if you pop a couple pills of Adderall before you put your helmet on. You know
What's
what I
the
mean?
what I understand though is that it helps athletes also study the playbook and whatnot. You know, when they're at home and they're kind of like, do I play Xbox or do I read this book? You know, you do the Adderall. All of a
That
sudden
may
they
be
focus
true.
on the study.
That may be true, but I would imagine I've never used Adderall in the in the course of playing any sport. But I would imagine if I was hopped up on Adderall and I went on the basketball court or a football field, that added it's energy, but it's brain brain function. It's everything. You're more on whatever you're on. You're on it. You know what I mean? You're quick to it.
Why is it against the regulations of the sport then?
Well, I think I don't know in particular as far as the chemical substance why it's illegal, but I know for sure that if you're taking anything that you aren't prescribed for,
Mm,
that violates the rules. So if now I think the rules have changed recently where players if they're prescribed for something they can use it,
yeah.
but I think that may have even changed recently if I'm not mistaken. But you can't take something that you're not prescribed for a competitive game in your place of business.
What's interesting is fundamentally what I see here with PEDs is an argument for, is this morally a good thing or bad thing? Let's take an example, all the healing ability of steroids, all the, Adderall, focusing on what you're doing, the task at hand, and you're also looking like, let's just say like marijuana, it's just it, you know, all it does is just kind of bring you down after a game. It's not a thing that'll help you during the course of a game. The morality of those, which I don't think that's an argument that's worth going into, versus the reason why it's illegal. Like we don't seem to ever attack like why is this illegal, and I wonder if maybe one of the reasons why it's illegal, and I say illegal in that within the sport you can't do it, you'll get suspended. I don't mean holistically like it's all illegal versus
You're
illegal.
probably not going to prison for taking steroids.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so, but like, I wonder if part of it is, are you building a culture? Let's just take steroids for example, where you have to take steroids, otherwise you're not going to succeed in this business.
I believe that's probably has a lot to do with it. I mean, you got if taking performance enhancing drugs were to become the norm in any fashion, you got to think about okay, court of public opinion weighs overall. Court of public opinion weighs more than the court of law, right? So you got these kids now who are going to come up. The first thing they want to do before they even go buy their cleats is to figure out how they're going to get something to help them help them get them up for the next play or whatever during the course of their season. And you can't have that. You definitely can't have that. So I think that has a lot to do with it. As far as the substance themselves, I'm kind of on the fence on it.
So I kind of you brought up like the children, right? The again taking the morality issue out of it. Isn't there though like a minimum requirement for the technology that you have? For example, if you're a golfer, the better clubs help you out. If you're a soccer player, the better cleats you have, that's going to enhance your game. And that's something that everybody has to have a minimum amount of minimum level of technology. Do PEDs fit into that technology level? Like you should be taking this nutrition, right? You should have the right nutrition and the right weightlifting regimen. But do PEDs kind of fit in there somehow? Like maybe there are some you should be using.
I would think so. I mean, I'm a gym guy. I'm into bodybuilding, and creatine is a very popular supplement. For bodybuilding, and it's not illegal. You can take all the creatine you want, and you're still considered a natural bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go a step up, and now you're talking about things that will get you banned and get you disqualified.
Do they?
But
Yeah.
I suppose maybe it's that because well, creatine is a naturally occurring substance in your body anyway. You get it from meat and everything else. You're just putting more of it into your body, so maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know if maybe if the chemical is man-made or artificial or something like that might make a difference. But
Then why is HGH a problem?
I have no clue why HGH is a problem. I think like with Peyton Manning, it makes perfect sense why he would take HGH.
Yeah,
Makes
30 years
absolute
old, right?
Exactly. He just broke his neck. I mean, he had a career-ending injury, came back and won a Super Bowl. That doesn't happen for anybody unless you did something to get there.
Right.
I don't know. Look at Lance Armstrong. Another one, another steroid thing. There should be a level. There should be some type of guideline.
Lance Armstrong like knowingly cheated and lied about it for a good 9 years. It was a systematic cheating. It wasn't just one drug. It was steroids. It was blood doping. It was a whole bunch of other chemicals, blood replacement chemicals. And then his whole team was doing it as well. Because if you recall, after he won his 7 in a row, he retired and his like #1 rider took over and went and won the Tour de France, and they nailed him for cheating. Basically, Armstrong was better at cheating, or maybe the doctors were better at catching him. I don't know. And it was when he went back to the Tour de France, like a few years later, like 3 years later, and came in third, I want to say, or second or third, which was a remarkable achievement considering he was 3 years out of the sport. That's when they nailed him. That's when they actually found evidence that he had been doing all these other things to cheat.
Isn't that fundamentally where you run into the problem when you start lying about it? For example, the whole Barry Bonds thing. Rich, I know you're an apologist for Barry Bonds.
I am an apologist for Barry Bonds,
but
yes.
The guy was just so much of a jerk about everything to the fans, to the media, to everything.
Yep.
And there's a great possibility this guy may never get into the Hall of Fame because he just would not own up to it.
Well, I don't think it's because he won't own up to it. I think if he owns up to it, he still doesn't get in the Hall of Fame. I think everyone from the steroid era that has any stench of steroids about them will never get in the Hall of Fame, including one Roger Clemens.
Yeah, I see that, but Roger Clemens has that same kind of attitude. Well, you know what though? What about the people who were never accused but highly suspected? A lot of them are never going to get in the Hall of Fame either.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of wrong. I mean,
I think if they call it the steroid era because mostly everybody was on it. So if the playing field is even, then the guys who did the best should be considered just like anybody else would. My opinion.
No, that's a very fair opinion. I mean, if everybody is at that same level, the question therein lies though. Then do you take people like Rafael Palmeiro? If you take the Roger Clemens, you take people that have lied in front of Congress, and are generally reprehensible human beings, and allow them get into the Hall of Fame. I know your answer, Rich.
Well, my answer is that the Hall of Fame is just that. It's the Hall of Fame, and I think that the sports writers that want to put a moral compass on the organization are hypocrites. Because if that's the case, then we should throw out probably a good third of the Hall of Fame classes that have already been inducted because they were reprehensible human beings. So, and then on top of that, there's also like great players that have never gotten in. And I'm talking like the second best, anyway, this is my thing. Ron Santo, the second best third baseman of all time when he retired, never got into the Hall of Fame. He's probably going to make it as a broadcaster, which is a travesty. But
yeah, but he played. I mean, come on, he played during a period where baseball almost died.
Yes, it's true.
It was a time when people were turning off the TV sets and switching over to NFL.
NFL and basketball. Yeah.
So I think he got kind of like he got a raw deal, and hopefully he gets in afterwards. But the thing though is, if you take somebody like a Ken Griffey Jr., who did not get a 100% vote for the Hall of Fame because there's a few jerks that have decided that as media they're going to be, like you said, the moral compass of our society.
Yeah.
Then how big of a joke is the Hall of Fame if you can't get a guy, Ken Griffey Jr., as 100%?
Well, I mean, they didn't get Babe Ruth as 100% Hall of Fame vote. So, first of all,
but Babe Ruth used to fight with people left and right. And
I know. So did Ty Cobb.
Hookers, so.
Yeah, I mean, Ty Cobb was a son of a bitch, and so was Babe Ruth. But regardless, if you're voting on their merits as a player to be inducted, it should be a no-brainer 100% vote. Cy Young didn't get 100% votes. I mean, we always forget. Yeah, he had the award for pitchers named after him. So, I mean, people forget that that's a real person. So, I mean, this whole organization, especially that's banging the drum, primarily in a lot of regards is the baseball writers. You notice that the football writers are not nearly as high and mighty about performance enhancing drugs in their
Oh,
rhetoric.
wait. No, let me tell you this. Speaking of that, and I'll
Yeah.
be quick here. What's the deal with just not talking about the whole PED thing with Peyton Manning? What's the deal with him just not talking about it whatsoever? That's just it's making it puts a fire in my stomach. I just get so angry about it.
Well, there was an article that you alerted us to about the entire Green Bay Packers, right?
Yes, yeah, the Al Jazeera report that was on what was it called? The Dark Side. That I mean, did you watch it, Abraham?
Yes, I did.
And what
Thank
do you
for
think about it after you saw it? What did you think?
Well, it makes me think that the NFL is basically so arrogant that they think they have a free pass. And I'm not just talking about the NFL as a whole, but also the individual franchises within it. They have the entire country wrapped around their finger, and they need to be careful. I mean,
Well, sure.
the more these things come out, I think the Al Jazeera, great news organization, but I think that they sometimes get poo-pooed by people in this country because it's like that's just
Because of the name.
It's Al
Because of the
Jazeera,
name.
foreign sounding.
Right.
But as more and more of these things come out, I think the NFL might run into problems, especially with concussions. Did you guys watch that? Did you guys watch that show over Christmas about the concussions?
The show?
Which one are you talking about?
It was like a YouTube document, or not YouTube documentary, but it was a documentary. It was really good. It just went
I'll check
into the
that out.
whole. What do you call that? The
CT or CTE?
Yeah, CTE.
Yeah.
CTE.
concussion, yeah. And
Yeah.
how prevalent it is in the NFL. And that could be, you could see shorter careers.
Yeah.
That,
Right.
That's the fundamental what they're trying to say is like careers are going to end after about 6-7 years rather than 15 years.
Yeah, with technology and everything, people have to do something new, and with every passing generation, they're going to find something new to talk about. I mean, like I said, football has been football since it was football. I mean, I don't know. I definitely agree that the players are bigger, stronger, and faster than they used to be. And so I can submit that, yeah, there are probably going to be more injuries, and maybe there is a thing with this, but I don't know. They're talking about the whole concussion movie that's going to take down the NFL and things like that, and I just don't think that's going to be happening. I don't think it's a possibility. I think it's dangerous sport, play it or no.
Yeah, I think it's a dangerous sport, play or no. I have to agree with you. Can I pick up your Peyton Manning point?
Yeah.
It's very simple because he's white and he plays quarterback and he's the All-American boy and
He's
All-American
the face
everything.
of the NFL.
He's the face of the NFL. He's the guy that tells us to go cut that meat.
Right.
And pitch. He's like the number one pitch man ever, basically, for commercials. Number one endorser on the NFL broadcast and out there. So I mean, certainly there's some institutional buildup.
Oh, sure.
As far as well, let's just put it this way: the NFL, as we all know, is not an equitable organization
Right.
from top to bottom. I mean, just look at the demographics of the ownership groups, just to give you some ideas of how things are. I mean, it's basically, I think there's one minority owner.
Shad Khan at the Jacksonville.
Shad Khan.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was a black owner for a few years. The BET owner, I want to say, owned a franchise. But that's come and gone. So it's certainly old white men that have lots of money. Basically, other than those of us that are shareholders of the Green Bay Packers.
You
Anyway.
are, really?
I have one share. Anyway, Abe's a shareholder too. So, but other than that, it's very much an old white man, issue. And to think anything other than that is,
wearing the
wrong.
blinders.
Right.
Wearing
And
the blinders, right.
and it's the Manning family. I mean, NFL to a certain extent is still a good old boys network. And
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
Rich, as always, I appreciate your opinion, even as wrong as you are about him. And this is about all the time that we have. And we are Seattle Sports Union. With me is Robert English and, of course, Richard Michelson. And myself, Abraham DeWeese, will be here every Sunday at 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And thank you again for joining us as we are in season 2. And check us out at seattlesportsunion.com, and check out our Facebook page, Seattle Sports Union, and our Twitter at SSU. Thanks, guys, for joining us. We're going to come back next week and talk a little more sports. Have a great day.